Well, it's about time for us to begin. We are in Book 1, Canto 3. And Canto 3 tells us that it is the yoga of the soul's release. So to give you a brief summary about last week, we see that Ashwapati, who is a pseudonym actually of Sri Aurobindo, is growing so rapidly into his higher self. Therefore, humanity is framing his movements less and less. And we see that Sri Aurobindo gives us this marvelous line: a greater being saw a greater world. So, we'll begin. Ashwapati is gaining experience, we can almost say instantaneously. Imagine if we could rise to those levels of consciousness by our own will, our own force. But we cannot. And that is why Sri Aurobindo and the Mother came down to earth to be a help to us, to help us in our struggle. Because when we have descended into this human form, we have lost almost all memory of past lives. Truly, we cannot remember past lives. Maybe a snippet here or there, but that's all. We have come almost ignorantly into a new body. Now, the body always changes after death. When we take a new body, we don't bring with us all the old problems, although there are some karmic residues that we still have to get rid of, that have been too strong in the last life for us to confront. So we now see that Ashwapati is able to grasp these powers that sleep unused in us. He would have a vision that did not have to think. It saw immediately. We knew this also of Mother, Trikala Drishti. She could see past, present, and future the moment she looked at us. It was an incredible experience, I tell you. I was very, very young, and I knew very little, but I knew that I was kneeling before the Divine Mother. So back to Ashwapati. He sees all of nature in a single glance. And he is not deceived anymore by form. All of us are deceived by form. We see this fellow and this lady and this fellow, and we see their form. Do we see their soul? Not yet. One day we will. Right now we only see the form. We can see some aspects of them, obviously, some of their nature, but we don't look directly into their soul, as Ashwapati is able to do. And when he does that, he is able to seize the idea in someone else's mind. And he even sees the motives which, from their own sight, men hide. He felt the beating life in other men invade him with their happiness and their grief, their love, their anger, their unspoken hopes entered in currents or in pouring waves into the immobile ocean of his calm. Now, this is what one felt when one knelt before Sri Aurobindo, that everything in you just entered into him automatically. He never judged. He never was critical. He saw what was happening. And now Sri Aurobindo tells us, and I will read these lines from Savitri, he heard the inspired sound of his own thoughts re-echoed in the vaults of other minds. This brings me to a remembrance of Churchill's speeches. If you listen to Churchill's speeches, you will hear echoes of Sri Aurobindo's thoughts. You don't have to challenge it. You can just listen and you will hear it. The world's thought streams traveled into his ken. His inner self grew near to other selves. So he is embracing the oneness in the multiplicity, and bore a kinship's weight, a common tie, because he took birth in this world as we all did. And therefore, we have this human mask that covers the divinity in us. But, Sri Aurobindo says, yet stood untouched, king of itself, alone. Now, a magical accord quickened and attuned to ethereal symphonies the old earthy strings. Our old earthy strings. These strings of environment, family, education, travel, etc. And I'll continue on with the new section. A heavenlier function with a finer mode, lit with its grace, man's outward earthliness. And of course, I mentioned last week Purani's experience with Sri Aurobindo. He has been away for quite some time, and he comes before Sri Aurobindo, and he sees that Sri Aurobindo is no longer thin and almost emaciated. This was the Sri Aurobindo he once knew, and his skin, which was a very dark complexion, has now changed to almost white. And he even sees his fingernails have changed and were white. And so he says to Sri Aurobindo, "What happened to you?" And Sri Aurobindo says to him, looking at his beard, Purani's new beard, "And what happened to you?" And that's all. He wouldn't answer any further. So we see now the soul's experience of its deeper sheaths, no more slept drugged by matter's dominance. Matter is about all we know in this realm of the ignorance. We understand by sense perception. I see it, I hear it, I taste it, etc. But for Ashwapati, Sri Aurobindo, a door parted, built in by matter's force, releasing things unseized by earthly sense. A world unseen, unknown by outward mind, appeared in the silent spaces of the soul. Well, things we cannot even imagine yet, things that we cannot seize by earthly sense. It's an entire world that is not known by outward mind. So he sat in secret chambers, looking out into the luminous countries of the unborn, where all things dreamed by mind are seen and true, and all that the life longs for is drawn close. What do we long for in this life? Peace, security, calm, goodness, kindness, joy, and so many other things we long for. A quiet life, a decent life, a life of good friendships, deep thoughts, and increasing inner peace. He saw the perfect in their starry homes, wearing the glory of a deathless form. See, this is something very special. The deathless have not died and were not born. They are simply deathless. We might even call them the gods, laying in the arms of the Eternal's peace, wrapped in the heartbeats of God ecstasy. Now I have to get to a new section here, and not easy for me to find. We will continue. He lived in the mystic space where thought is born. Now this is an interesting line, a fascinating line. Where do we think thought is born? In our mind? Well, we have thoughts coming into our mind all the time that we don't consider ours. And the great ones who have risen to the spiritual planes of existence see that these thoughts are universal. They're all over. There are millions of them flowing in the world. And there are two ways, if we want to achieve a silent mind, that we can do it. The first way is to stop them from coming in. And this is what Sri Aurobindo did. And the moment he did that, he went into the Brahmic consciousness. Absolute silence, absolute peace. And the world was an illusion. But he waited. He waited very patiently. And eventually he saw that the world may be seen as an illusion from our ignorant point of view, but it is only an aspect of the divinity, an aspect of the one appearing in the multiplicity. So I continue. He lived in the mystic space where thought is born and will is nursed by an ethereal power and fed on the white milk of the eternal strength till it grows into the likeness of a God. So our will can be nursed by an ethereal power, and it can be fed on the strengths of the eternal. And one day, we too shall grow into the likeness of a God. In the witnesses' occult rooms with mind-built walls, on hidden interiors, lurking passages, opened the windows of the inner sight. This is such an experience, you see, because it is only the inner sight, the true sight, that will enable us to see actually what is manifested on this earth. What we see is something with half-blinded eyes. Yes, I see you. I see you. And I see that you are a woman. I see that you are a man. But what else do I see? I know nothing about you. But those who have the inner sight see everything. So therefore, Sri Aurobindo says, he owned the house of undivided time. Now, for us, time is always divided. We are thinking of yesterday, thinking of today, thinking of tomorrow, perhaps thinking a little bit of the future, perhaps remembering something of the past or of the immediate present. But he owned the house of undivided time. So time is eternal. There is no limit or end to time, just as there is no limit or end to space. Space is eternal. Can we say it ends someplace? Can we say time ends someplace? No. So, lifting the heavy curtain of the flesh, what a line. The heavy curtain of the flesh. That is the veils that cover us. If we could lift that heavy curtain, we would truly begin to see. So, therefore, he's lifted it, and he stood upon a threshold, serpent-watched, and peered into gleaming, endless corridors, silent and listening in the silent heart for the coming of the new and the unknown. This threshold, serpent-watched. Mother talks about it. She writes about it. She spoke about it, I believe, to Satprem in the agenda. And she says she comes upon this great cobra, huge serpent. And she wants to enter into that place that the serpent is guarding. But the serpent says, I cannot let you enter. He's speaking to the Divine Mother. And he says, unless you can clear out the sex influence in the world. At that time, Mother couldn't do it. So she couldn't enter. Now, he is silent, Ashwapati. But he's also listening in the silent heart. Listening for what? For the coming of the new and the unknown. All of us are here today because we have come down to seek the unknown. None of us are here by chance. That's for certain. We have had perhaps hundreds of thousands of births. Sri Aurobindo told one of his disciples that generally when we die and go to our place of rest, We are there no more than 2 years before we take a new birth. Imagine that. Before we take a new birth, we just are in that resting place where the psychic being has gathered all of the positive things that have become a part of us in this life. All the negative things are thrown out. Of course, the body is thrown out because the body is only a vehicle that we took for a certain experience. And we all took this experience in a specific body. We didn't choose a body arbitrarily. We chose it consciously. Our parents, whether by accident or by intention, began our birth cycle. And they brought us up in a certain way. All of this had already been pre-planned by the soul. Now, the soul in us is indestructible, permanent, illimitable, and cannot be harmed in any way. So, the soul chooses the next birth depending on the progress, the potential progress we can make. So now we are here, and hopefully we are all trying to make progress in some way or another. So Ashwapati is listening in the silent heart for the coming of the new and the unknown. And what does he do? He gazed across the empty stillnesses and heard the footsteps of the undreamed idea in the far avenues of the beyond. How beautiful. This poetry is beyond any poetry you could ever read. I have read hundreds, perhaps thousands of poets and tens of thousands of poems, and there is nothing like Savitri. Why? Because Sri Aurobindo had evolved to such an extent that he could go into those highest atmospheres, those heavens, and above the heavens, and bring down the mantric power of the word. And Savitri is all mantra. He heard the secret voice, the word that knows. And once again, I want to share with you the fact that when Sri Aurobindo capitalizes a word, it is the essence of that word. He heard the secret voice, the word that knows, and saw the secret face that is our own. The inner planes uncovered their crystal doors. So these inner planes, which are usually shut to us, and Sri Aurobindo has described them absolutely to the nth degree. We live in this ignorance, which is not truly an ignorance. And if you are ever interested in Pondicherry, Mondays and Saturdays at 5:15, we have Ranganathan, who teaches us the life divine. And he is absolutely brilliant. I asked him the other night, do you favor Savitri or the life divine? He says, it's apples and oranges. He says, Savitri is magic. The life divine is logic. Very beautiful. So these inner planes that Sri Aurobindo tells us about. Okay, we are living in what he calls the ignorance, which is just a compressed or maybe diluted sense of the truth that's not yet revealed to us. So we live in the body, in the vital, and in the mind. But just above the mind is the first level of the spiritual planes, the higher mind. And above the higher mind is the illumined mind. And above that is the intuitive mind. And above that is the overmind. And above that is the supermind. And above that is Satchit Ananda. And above that is the transcendence, where there is nothing but peace and silence, no movement at all. So, we have a long way to go, but we can begin with the higher mind. And how do you get there? Prayer is one of the best ways. Silencing the mind is an excellent way. Filling the being with peace and calm to allow this to open to us. So we continue with Savitri. Strange powers and influences touched his life. A vision came of higher realms than ours. A consciousness of brighter fields and skies. Now, Sri Aurobindo has so much to tell us about this word, consciousness. What is consciousness? So I'm going to share with you some of his quotes from Letters on Yoga, which is now quite a few volumes, and The Life Divine. Here's what he says. Ordinarily, we mean by it consciousness, our first obvious idea of a mental waking consciousness such as is possessed by the human being during the major part of his bodily existence, when he is not asleep, stunned, or otherwise deprived of his physical and superficial methods of sensation. Okay? In this sense, it is plain enough that consciousness is the exception and not the rule in the order of the material universe. We ourselves do not always possess it. In such a view, the word consciousness changes its meaning. It is no longer synonymous with mentality, but indicates a self-aware force of existence, of which mentality is a middle term. Below mentality, it sinks into vital and material movements, which are for us subconscient. Above, it rises into the supramental, which is for us superconscient. But in all, it is one and the same thing, organizing itself differently. This is, once more, the Indian conception of Chit, which, as energy, creates the worlds, the life divine. Now, this is from a letter on yoga. Consciousness is not only power of awareness of self and things, it is or has also a dynamic and creative energy. So consciousness can create. It can determine its own reactions or abstain from reactions. It can not only answer to forces, but create or put out of itself forces. Consciousness is Chit, but also Chit Shakti. And one more from the Life Divine, so I don't take up the whole afternoon. For the essence of consciousness is the power to be aware of itself and its objects. And lastly, from the Mother. Consciousness is the faculty of becoming aware of anything through identification, not through the mind, not through the feelings of the heart, not through the vital nature, but through identification. The divine consciousness is not only aware, but knows and effects. The Mother. Collected Works of the Mother, Volume 15. So what is Ashwapati doing now? He's experiencing a consciousness of brighter fields and skies, of beings less circumscribed than brief-lived men, and subtler bodies than these passing frames. Frames, our bodies. He's seeing subtler bodies. They are not circumscribed anymore. They're not enclosed or restricted within limits anymore. They're not confined. And what does he see? Objects too fine for our material grasp. Acts vibrant with a superhuman light, and movements pushed by a superconscient force. And what does he tell us about this superconscient? He says the superconscient is consciousness taken up into an absolute of being. That's from the Life Divine. And joys that never flowed through mortal limbs, and lovelier scenes than earth's, and happier lives, a consciousness of beauty and of bliss, a knowledge which became what it perceived, replaced the separated sense and heart, and drew all nature into its embrace. See, one day we will see when the separated sense and heart are fully conscious of beauty and bliss, and our knowledge becomes what it perceives, we will then draw all nature into our embrace. Now we can certainly appreciate nature, but we cannot fully understand her. Science tries, there's no question about that. But science has always posited and lived on empiric knowledge. Only what I can know by the five senses, that is true. Now science has grown and is accepting that there is a consciousness in the universe. They have not quite reached as yet the ether, which is above the five senses. And the ether is where everything really begins to manifest. So, the mind leaned out to meet the hidden worlds. Air glowed and teemed with marvelous shapes and hues. In the nostrils quivered celestial fragrances. On the tongue lingered the honey of paradise. All these experiences Ashwapati is having. And these 4 lines continue that extraordinary experience. So as his mind leads out and meets the hidden worlds, and what marvelous worlds they are, he sees, feels, smells, and hears so much. Perhaps at times, some of you have had these glimpses in some part of your being. For me, it was the hearing of the music of the spheres. A music unlike anything on earth, heavenly, angelic, transporting one into a new world's moment. And I only heard it for a few brief seconds. And it lasted and lasted now for more than 60 years. A channel of universal harmony. Hearing was a stream of magic audience, a bed for occult sounds earth cannot hear. These occult sounds are, for me, the guides for the Om Choir, which is coming up at 5:30. They are coming closer and closer to us. Or perhaps we are slowly opening more and more. Sri Aurobindo continues now. Out of a covert tract of slumber self, covert, of course, is hidden. We say in America covert and in other places, but the British pronounce it covert. Out of a covert tract of slumber self, that is a secret tract, a hidden tract, something that's not viewable with knowledge or not openly practiced or engaged in. So what happened? The voice came of a truth submerged, unknown, that flows beneath the cosmic surfaces. Now, we have to define a little this term cosmic. In the Cambridge Dictionary, cosmic pertains to the cosmos and the characteristic of its phenomena as forming part of the material universe, infinite. Now, Sri Aurobindo, in a letter to Amal Kiran, who was the disciple who wrote dozens and dozens of letters to him on Savitri, 95% of the time or more, he offered corrections which Sri Aurobindo did not accept. So now Sri Aurobindo says there is no difference between the terms universal and cosmic, except that universal can be used in a freer way than cosmic. Universal may mean of the universe, cosmic in that general sense, but it may also mean common to all. There is a universal weakness, but you cannot say this is a cosmic weakness. Sri Aurobindo teaches us English as we go along, and what English it is. Only mid an omniscient silence heard, held by intuitive heart and secret sense. So I know that I'm constantly sharing definitions with you, but Sri Aurobindo is very specific about the definition, about the words he coined, and he coined many words, and he uses English words in often totally different ways. So he's translating from the Upanishads, and he says, omniscient, having total knowledge, knowing everything. And then he tells us in the Upanishads, the omniscient is not born nor dies, nor has he come into being from anywhere, nor is he anyone. He is unborn, he is constant and eternal. He is the Ancient of Days, who is not slain with the slaying of the body. And in the secret of the Veda, this is the omniscient who knows the law of our being and is sufficient to his works. Let us build the song of his truth by our thought, and make it as if a chariot on which he shall mount. When he dwells with us, then a happy wisdom becomes ours. With him for friend, we cannot come to harm. Only mid an omniscient silence heard, held by intuitive heart and secret sense. So I'll stop here. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Pardon?
Just listening to your last correspondence about cosmic and the universal. The cosmic and the universal.
Yes.
Sri Aurobindo says they are same. Could you kindly elaborate on this?
But I have already done that in his statement. I can repeat it. In the letters on yoga, he says there is no difference between the terms universal and cosmic, except that universal can be used in a freer way than cosmic. Universal may mean of the universe, cosmic in that general sense, but it may also mean common to all. That is, this is a universal weakness, but you cannot say this is a cosmic weakness. Letters on Yoga. Namaste all. Namaste. Namaste. Namaste.